last session, the second last before the Samapan Samaro, so it becomes the second last session of today's this fest, which is an international literature fest, UNMESH. For this session, I would like to invite, first of all, Shri H.S. Shiv Prakash. He will chair the session. Sir, you are invited on the dais. Please come. I would extend my invitation to Mr. Ashwini Kumar, to Mr. Pankaj Mittal, and to Sandeep Bhutoria ji. Please join us over the stage. Ji. Okay. The session is on soft power of India, भारत की सौम्य शक्ति. समाज में सॉफ्ट पावर जबरदस्ती के बजाय सहयोग करने की क्षमता है. इसमें अपील और आकर्षण द्वारा दूसरों की प्राथमिकताओं को आकार देना शामिल है. भारत की सॉफ्ट पावर किसी भी दूसरे देश से कम नहीं, बल्कि असल में कई देशों से काफ़ी ज़्यादा है. भारतीय संस्कृति के कई पक्ष लोगों को आश्चर्यचकित कर देते हैं, और यहाँ तक कि भारतीय महाद्वीप के भौतिक परिदृश्य का वर्णन भी दुनिया के अनेक लोगों को प्रेरणा प्रदान करता है. भारत की कई अमूर्त सांस्कृतिक विरासतें हैं जो अद्वितीय हैं, और ये सभी पक्ष मिलकर भारत की सॉफ्ट पावर बनते हैं. भारत की सॉफ्ट पावर की खोज करना तथा विदेशों में अपनी सॉफ्ट पावर को अधिक कुशलता एवं सफलता से बढ़ावा देने में सक्षम बनाने के लिए किन उपायों की आवश्यकता है, यह सत्र इसी पर विचार करने के लिए केंद्रित किया गया है. सॉफ्ट पावर इज द एबिलिटी ऑफ द सोसाइटी टू co-opt rather than coerce. It involves shaping the preferences of others through appeal and attraction. Soft power of India is no less than any other country, and in fact overwhelmingly superior to many nations. Many components of Indian culture leaves one wonderstruck, and even the narrations of physical landscape of Indian subcontinent are inspirational to many across the world. There are many intangible cultural heritages of India that are unique to the land, and all these aspects put together make up soft power of India. This session is an exploration into the soft power of India and what measures are required to enable India to promote its soft power abroad more efficiently and successfully. I take the opportunity to introduce the person who is chairing the session, Shri H.S. Shiv Prakash. He is a retired professor of theatre and performance studies, JNU, New Delhi, and has authored 9 books of poems, 15 plays, and 3 critical works in Kannada, which have also been translated into several Indian and foreign languages. He is the recipient of Karnataka Sahitya Academy Rajyotsav Award, Sangeet Natak Academy Award, Sahitya Academy Award, Kuvempu Bhasha Bharati Translation Award, and Kusum Graj Kavya Puraskar. He was the editor of Sahitya Academy biannual journal, Indian Literature, and the director, the Tagore Center, Berlin, Germany. I invite you, sir, to conduct this session.
Good. Should I say good afternoon, good evening? What should I say? Good evening. After so many sessions, I just get confused about time. So good evening, and thank you for the very generous introduction. I'll try to live up to it. Now, without any more ado, I'll request our co-panelists to make the presentations one by one. At the end, I may or may not have a few things to say, but we will take some questions if the time allows. So how much time do we give them?
12 minutes each participant.
Okay, 12 minutes please. Ashwini, take care. Because you're Mahakal, you transcend time all the time.
We can take questions as well towards the end. Yeah.
Some discussion.
So the first speaker today is Ashwini Kumar. He is one of the... Did you say something?
Nothing. He's my old friend, good friend.
He is one of the prominent Indian poet writings in English. His major poetry volumes include My Grandfather's Imaginary Typewriter and Banaras and the Other. His poems are noted for lyrical celebration of garbled voices of memory and subversive whimsy quality. Recently, a collection of his select poems titled Architecture of Alphabets has been published in Hungarian. He is also one of the chief editors of Global Civil Society at London School of Economics and co-founder of Indian Novels Collective for promoting translation of classic novels from Indian languages. Presently, he is professor and dean of the School of Development Studies at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. I humbly invite you, sir, for your address.
I will
just, yes, felicitations. I invite Dr. Srinivasan Rao, Secretary, Sahitya Academy, to please do the honors and welcome our guest over the dais. Please, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm particularly thanking Dr. Rao Sahab. In fact, I was just, in a conversation. Let me begin with the soft power straight, with the introduction of, Rao Sahab, who is leading us from the front. So, नहीं आप बैठेंगे अगर आप बैठेंगे नहीं तो फिर हमारा सॉफ्ट पावर का डिस्कशन नहीं होगा सो आई जस्ट गॉट अ कॉल फ्रॉम हिम दैट यू कम एंड जॉइन दिस पैनल सॉफ्ट पावर सो आई सेड दैट लुक दिस इज लाइक माय क्लासरूम लेक्चर बट आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू बोर audience with my typically boring professorial talk on soft power. For me, Rao Sahab himself is symbolic of the soft power, the way he has curated. I was, talking to TV guy, and I have given this interview, so I told him that this is a secret that I will share with you when you are part of the audience. This whole Utkarsh, Unmesh to Utkarsh itself is the symbol of India becoming soft power. I would request Sahitya Academy to share this incredible experience with the world around, So here is the idea of the soft power, and Shiva, another co-panelist, Shiva is my good old friend, long time, and a poet friend and a scholar friend. And when he was asking me, Ashwini, what is this idea of soft power? So let me give you, a less pedantic, but the more scholarly idea of what is this soft power. Although India has been a civilizational power since time immemorial, since antiquity. But when you come to this, when the modernity began and we have started losing our global significance or perhaps the, salience in the global market of ideas, the West dominated and started, dominating and in the sense of, Americanizing everything. So that's the power of the West in terms of the soft power and particularly American soft power. So here is this idea. I remember our professor Joseph Nye at Harvard introduced and wrote a stunning book in 1990 published Soft Power, leading from the front, something he was talking about in terms of American diplomacy and making a huge distinction. I'm trained in international relations and my own book that I co-edited and wrote with Dirk Messner, who is currently, heading German Environment Office. So together we developed a vision for the world in terms of soft power. So I'm very happy that I'm back to my book So what the Joseph Nye did, he made a distinction between hard power and soft power. So the hard power is traditionally considered, the military power and the economic power. On these two variables, if you look at, India is nowhere. I mean, like, although India has been developing, military and economic muscle, but in terms of the Joseph Nye idea, the West, particularly America, has enormous influence and the wide-ranging, capacity to dominate the world in terms of the military and economic power. Now here comes the soft power. The soft power he looked at in terms of three variables, three ideas: political values, secondly, culture, and the third is diplomacy. So these are the soft power, and together they, build a matrix of new ideas of governing international relations and the global, governance in the larger context. So now let's see how India has been, so I'm very happy that today Sahitya Academy has curated a panel on discussing various implications and ramifications of this soft power. Is India a soft power? I've been, talking and teaching this course for the last several years, in fact 2 decades, whether or not India can compete, And my friends and my colleagues in the discipline, particularly international relations and diplomacy and other areas, have been working on India as a strength, as, soft power. So this is the concept that I have summarized, and when I started thinking about how today I'm going to place India as a soft power, so I'm reminded of, none other than Vivekananda. When he went to 1893, attended and gave this mesmerizing speech before World, Parliament of Religions. I think we must remember this was the guy, much before all these ideas invented by Western academics, gave us this idea of, India as a soft power. And the soft power in the sense of, he was not actually talking like a typical economist, and he was not even, if you look at the speech of Vivekananda ji, he was talking about, the civilizational salience of India. And he was, directly talking to the Western audience that, look, here we are, and here is a religion and people who can significantly contribute to peace, harmony, and peace and harmony in the larger context, not just in the material context, but in the spiritual context. This is what I think, our Professor Joseph Nye must have in his mind when he was conceptualizing this idea of values, culture, and diplomacy, So coming from, although if you look at the large literature, and I'm sure, Vinay Sahasrabuddhe ji, who has done a lot of excellent work on soft power, he always speaks in terms of, on a lighter note, I would say, from Buddha to Bollywood. So when you look at Buddha to Bollywood, you see the whole range of Joseph Nye's ideas, playing out in terms of, soft power. So Buddha is everywhere. I don't know, many of us who in the literature classes, particularly Shiva, must have taught Nietzsche and Nietzschean ideas in literature. Nietzsche was strongly influenced by Buddha. So many of us, teaching literature, art, culture, have been influenced, including, I was mentioning to Shiva once again, Kumaraswamy, Ananda Kumaraswamy, who popularized dance of Shiva, And this dance of Shiva is now embedded into our idea, in the diasporic idea. So when I teach South Indian courses in Chicago or Wisconsin or elsewhere, so this dance of Shiva going to the West and capturing the mind, Buddha, Shiva. So you can see the landscape, particularly in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, when the West started suffering from what Nietzsche called famously alienation and mass alienation, That is where, this idea of Buddha and Shiva started, giving a new sense of peace and harmony in the Western sense. So this is one component where I look at, soft power. And secondly, much of these ideas of the wonder, they looked at more in terms of, India is a land of sapera, snake charmers, etc., elephants, now cheetahs, But that's not something, on a lighter note, but on the serious, reflection, if you look at India, now India, today, if you look at any part of the world, Africa, Latin America, and Asia, and also Europe, I've been all over and see I've taught in Africa too, how India has emerged, not just a symbolic, political, cultural order, but also a civilizational order. Perhaps in the last 10, 15 years, what I have seen, major change in the way the world looks at India. It's not the same world that, Frantz Fanon, in the post-colonial world, and especially in the 60s and the 70s, when the decolonization began, started calling us wretched of the earth. We are no longer wretched of the earth. We are the land where, you have Arundhati, you have Gitanjali Sri winning Booker Prizes, Pulitzer, you can see. I mean, Arvind Adiga, So all these writers, poets, and of late you just watch Oppenheimer film and you will find that, the strong connection, the Gita. I'm not saying that, I'm an economist and trying to, export and sell Gita. That's not idea of selling Gita. The idea of Gita is capturing the mind of the West. Not in the sense of the military might or in the sense of economic might. We might have, as an economist, I'm trying to track, 4%, 7%, 6% growth rate, but that's not the power that we are trying to espouse, The power of, you can see the power of perhaps, the Lagan, the power of Indian music, the art, the culture, you can see all over. And also cuisine, come to London, I go to Hungary, my books have been translated extensively in Hungarian language. And you can see the importance, you can see without any, like caravan of, soldiers or the gun-toting soldiers, we are there. We are there. And, influencing, I think Joseph Nye, concluded soft power. It becomes soft power only when through, and these are not tools. These are not techniques, This becomes a symbolic order itself. This is not just like Indian cuisine you are having in London or, I've said in some of my early poems, Yaar Julai, when I'm in the London or in the market or on the street and having some desi food. This is not like desi food as a soft power. It's like that symbolic order which starts, persuading the world to our view, to our civilizational reality. And this is where I linked this idea of soft power to Vivekananda's famous speech before the World Parliament of Religions. That still haunts us and also resonates with our emerging reality of India is not as, typically Westphalian, nation state. India is more than that, And you can see the way, I'm once again come, back to here, Unmesh to Utkarsh, the way you look at, your languages, the way the grand, opening happened, It is a reminder of the incredible India going all over the world, I mean, like the multiple cultures, the multiple languages, linguistic traditions, and even, spoken traditions of Adivasi, Janjati, you can see. I mean, like you come to, Canada, or I've lived in Oklahoma, so I can tell you that how they have been exterminated in the West, particularly in an American Indian territory, so-called. So here, by, encompassing these ideas of culture, political values in terms of democracy. Of late, I have started working with Election Commission, and we have been trying to develop an idea about how India's elections could become a global template, We don't need army, we don't need, economic might, but we can start, sharing our experience of conducting elections in terms of 928 million voters, imagine. And that happens with few little disturbance here and there. Come to America and you will find how American elections, stagger around, face lots of challenges, etc., etc. I don't want to spend more time on the deficiencies and shortcomings of their elections. So even trying to revise Joseph Nye's original ideas, what we have done that we have expanded the list, We have expanded the list of Joseph Nye and, taken it more than, exporting the idea of democracy. Our democracy, despite glitches here and there, is a sparkling democracy. Believe it, I mean, like some of my colleagues talk about a lot of democracy regression, backsliding, but I continue to believe the way Indian democracy, with all the diversity and the way we have seen here, one of the reflections of that larger democracy is here in UNMESHA and Utkarsh. So, just to conclude my initial remarks in the sense of, presenting a cosmopolitan idea of soft power beginning from, Buddha to Vivekananda and yoga and Bollywood, Indian cuisine, but if you put together, even sports also, so put together, look at, how India in the last 10, 15 years has become, if not Vishwaguru, but at least a temple, a civilizational temple, which can be called incredible experience of the global reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The next eminent speaker is Pankaj Mittal. Pankaj Mittal is currently Secretary General of Association of Indian Universities. She has served as the first regular Vice Chancellor of Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya, Haryana for 2 terms. She is also the member of General Assembly and Finance Committee of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, ICCR, New Delhi. She is a recipient of Fulbright Nehru Scholarship Grant, President of India Award, Honorary Doctorate D.Lit from Karnataka State Women's University, First Padma Shri Subhashini Devi Award 2018, Kimpro Gold Standard Award, and Srimati Sushma Swaraj Stri Shakti Samman 2020. I most humbly invite you, ma'am, for your address.
Thank you and a very good evening to all of you. First of all, thanks to Dr. Srinivas Rao for inviting me here and giving me an opportunity to interact with all of you. We have just heard a very, very scholarly discourse on soft power of India. I'll be speaking more in a layman's language because when this session was about to start, somebody from the audience asked me, ये तो बड़ा अजीब टॉपिक है, soft power ही soft power होता क्या है? So I thought I will speak in a very, very layman's language, and since I am from education, I'll concentrate more on education, which you have missed out, that education can also be used as a soft power for India. So like he was saying that we have, like every nation has, I mean we say this is a powerful nation basically because of say military power of that nation, for example, China, US, what type of military power they have. We have the economic power of a nation, but these are both hard powers. When we talk of soft powers, we talk of soft things like culture, like cuisine, like education, like Bollywood, so many things. He was talking about Lagan, I was remembering Natu Natu. So in Delhi, even the embassies, they were performing on the song Natu Natu and putting the videos, I mean all the videos were viral. So this is how the country or the culture of the country or the history or the legacy of the country, it influences various nations. So that is the soft power of India. That how we can influence other nations, how we can impact their lives, how we can be, how can we impact other nations through these things which are known as soft powers. So he has talked about culture, he has talked about cuisine, he has talked about Bollywood, so many things, even sports. So I will talk about education, that how education can be the soft power, especially today when India is hosting the G20 presidency, when the G20 nations are here in India, and like in India, at AIU, I am from Association of Indian Universities, which happens to be the largest university association of the world. We have something like 957 universities as our members. So when all these G20 nations were coming and we had something called E20, which is Education 20, then we realized that in E20, what happens is that there are deliberations, and who comes to our country is mostly 2 things, the ministers, education ministers, and also the bureaucrats from these nations, they come to India and then all G20 nations discuss together. Then we realize that the ones who have to implement everything is the universities, and nobody is talking about the universities. Universities are not invited. So we held something called Uni 20 in Pune, where the vice chancellors of the universities in the G20 nations were invited, and there were very good discussions for 3 days that how education can, I mean, because India is the second largest higher education system in the country, and it has a lot of influence. When you talk of soft power, you will feel that what is happening today is like after the national education policy, where a lot of emphasis has been given to internationalization of higher education, when we are talking of dual degrees, joint degrees, the world was waiting for a very, very long time. And now there are even agents who are saying that we will have foreign nations to come and foreign universities to come and have, say, joint degrees, dual degrees with your country, because India is a big market for them. As in the education field, India has become such a big market because India is sending something like 10 lakh students to foreign universities for studying, and those 10 lakh students are spending almost the entire education budget, I mean, the amount equal to the entire education budget of India in those countries for studying there. And how many are coming to India? Only 50,000. And that too from neighboring countries like Nepal, Afghanistan, Africa, Bangladesh. So we have to use the education as a tool, because education is something, I mean, India can be a hub for affordable quality education for the world, and world is looking for affordable quality education. When our students go out, they are paying a lot for the quality education they are getting there. But India is not able to harness that power so far, and that is what the national education policy intends to do when it talks about having foreign campuses in India, when it talks of Indian universities going abroad and setting up their campuses abroad, when it talks of having international students' offices in India. So this is the soft power, which is the education soft power, which we are talking about. And one very, very important thing which I can give as a suggestion, which emanated in one of our conferences, was like, you must be remembering the Fulbright Fellowship. I am also a recipient of that Fulbright Fellowship or scholarship. It was started in 1946, and right now something like 370,000 Fulbright scholars are there in the world, and they are spread across the world in every nation, and they are almost working like US ambassadors, because they praise the US education system, they tell everybody about the US education system. Similarly, Erasmus Mundus was started in the Europe somewhere in 1987, and right now there are 80,000 Erasmus fellows who are again spread across the world. But India doesn't have a fellowship which it can boast of. We have ICCR scholarships, we have some scholarships for Study in India program which is run by HCL, but we don't have a fellowship which we can boast of. So the idea which emanated was like we should have a fellowship called, say, BBV fellowship, Bharat Bhagya Vidhata fellowship, BBV, Bharat Bhagya Vidhata, which comes from our national anthem, because India is going to shape the destiny of the world. And it should be something like 7,000, 8,000 fellowships every year, which can be for the teachers as well as the students. But then these scholars who will, I mean, by the time, say, we celebrate this Amrit Kal is over, and when we celebrate 100 years of India, we should be having something like 2 lakh Bharat Bhagya Vidhata fellows who are spread all over the world, and they are talking about India. They know what India is. They have come to India. They have seen what India is. They have seen what Indian universities are. Because many a times it is felt that Indian universities are not very good. Most of the times it is felt that the foreign universities have to come and give something to us. We don't have anything for them. But it is not that way. The only thing is we have to showcase ourselves. We have to showcase our soft power of education. So that is what I was thinking that I will be speaking to you today, that we can be having this type of fellowship, Bharat Bhagya Vidhata fellowship. Then we can be promoting Indian languages in many countries, like Sanskrit. Here, when we talk of Sanskrit, in many of our universities, even the seats of Sanskrit are not filled. I mean, the teachers are facing a dilemma that मेरी नौकरी रहेगी कि नहीं, क्योंकि बच्चे ही नहीं आ रहे मेरे डिपार्टमेंट में. But in foreign universities, in foreign countries, Sanskrit is being taught. In Germany, a lot of Sanskrit is being taught. So it is very important that we promote Indian languages. Again, that is the soft power. Indian study centers, we can be having Indians. We have an institution called, in India it is there, American Institute of Indian Studies. So there American scholars are coming and studying India. So they are coming to India. So we can be having such type of centers all over the world, where they can be talking, the foreign students can be studying about the Indian studies. Now that India is open to distance and open learning, earlier we were not having online programs, but last 2 years we have started approving online programs, and Indian online programs can be studied all over the world. So we can be sort of going to each and every corner of the world without even setting up their campuses there, through online education, through distance educations. So that is a power which we should harness, and there are many takers. There are universities who are having many, many foreign scholars. There is a platform by the government of India called Swayam, which is a India MOOCs platform. There many, many foreign scholars are attending Indian courses, and they are loving them. Especially the courses which are in Indian traditional knowledge systems, the courses in yoga, in meditation. I mean, many, many courses they are taking over. We can be talking of international collaborations. It can be either in terms of, say, joint degrees, dual degrees. It can be in terms of research collaborations. It can be in terms of student exchange. It can be in terms of teacher exchange. It can be in terms of semester exchange, curriculum exchange. So many international collaboration pathways are there. So that power we can be using to influence the world. We can be talking of Indian philosophy and wisdom. Again, that is something which the world means they know that India is very good in philosophy and wisdom. You have just heard him. So that is something which we should make use of as the soft power. We can be using the cultural education, education diplomacy, education tourism. Sometimes education tourism, like once I went to a agricultural university, and there we saw like how the crops are grown, how the dairy is done, how the horticulture is done, how the beekeeping is done. And then we realized many of our students, when they eat, and when you ask them, like, there was a episode in which a student was sitting in the mess, and we said, whom do you think you should be thanking for the plate of food you are having? The child thought, and then he said, my parents, because they paid for it, or maybe maximum the cook who has cooked it. But then we said, what about the person who has grown the seeds, who has grown the pulses, who has grown the spices, the one who has brought them here, and what about those? He said, I never thought of it. So making students aware, or maybe creating that gratefulness in the students, that is also very, very important. So I think in education, to a very, very large extent, can be used as a tool for software diplomacy, and it is much, much easier to use because India is the largest higher education system. We have 4 crore students in our higher education system and something like 26 crore students in our school education system. So this is not even the size of many countries. So when we go to many countries, they say the number of students studying in your universities and colleges are more than the entire population of our country. So we are so big, and education system is so big, therefore we should be using education as a very, very powerful soft diplomacy tool for India. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Our next eminent speaker is Shri Sandeep Bhutoria. Sandeep Bhutoria is a writer and social and cultural activist. He has published books on travel, wildlife, and philanthropy. He is the managing trustee of the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. He is also the honorary Secretary General of the Bengal, a Kolkata-based NGO. He is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, RSA, London. He has been nominated by the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, as a member of the Board of Trustees of Indian Museum, Kolkata, and Hindi Salahakar Samiti of the Ministry of Civil Aviation. I humbly invite you, sir, for your address.
मंच और श्रोताओं दोनों को सादर प्रणाम. Let me start with the most talked about film of the year, Oppenheimer. I was most intrigued to discover an Indian link during the promotions of the Christopher Nolan film about the father of the atom bomb. And no, I'm not talking about the most obvious scene here. Let me clarify. I'm not talking about the Bhagavad Gita scene of the film here. During a media promotional scene, 2 actors of the film, Matt Damon and Emily Blunt, face off over American versus British food. The British actress manages to silence the American actor by saying, "Do you know what the #1 most eaten food on the England is? It's the chicken tikka masala. How cultural is that?" A film on an American scientist made by a British-American director starring an Irish actor in the lead, distributed by the US giant Universal Picture, tipped to be an Oscar favorite, and chicken tikka masala made its way to the promo table effortlessly. That, dear ladies and gentlemen, is a taste of soft power of India today. अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संबंधों में सॉफ्ट पावर वाक्यांश का जितना दुरुपयोग हुआ है उतना शायद कभी नहीं हुआ। अमेरिकी विदेश नीति ने अपनी पीढ़ी के सबसे प्रभावशाली विद्वानों में से एक जोसेफ नी ने जब इस वाक्यांश को घड़ा तो उन्होंने एक बेहद महत्वपूर्ण लेकिन कभी भी ढंग से ना समझी गई अंतर्राष्ट्रीय रिश्तों की एक ऐसी प्रक्रिया पर रोशनी डाली जिसके जरिए दूसरों से एक ऐसे परिणामों को मनवाया जैसे परिणाम आप खुद दूसरे की संस्कृति, राजनीतिक मूल्य और विदेश नीति पर होते हुए देखना चाहते हैं। आज दुनिया के सबसे बड़े लोकतंत्र के रूप में भारत सॉफ्ट पावर का एक बेहतरीन मॉडल तो है ही और आने वाली चुनौतियों का इसके कारण एक आईना भी है। By popular wisdom, the three primary components of India's soft power are obviously the cuisine, culture, and tourism. In all of my travel abroads, through the years, sampling the Indian food on offer has been constant. Nothing Indian permeates different cities, countries, and continents quite like our cuisine. From this recent tikka masala ad to the dal, biryani, to the samosas of various size, which you can often see in UK and USA stores, to the minis, cocktail samosas from the hotels they serve you, curry to the kebabs. At any table in the world serving Indian cuisine, the conversation invariably starts from food and meanders through culture exploration, through inform and enrich, and from cuisine to culture. From India, Amitabh Bachchan. From India, Shah Rukh Khan. This has brought a smile to countless Indian traveling abroad for several decades now. I remember my incidents in Tanzania when I was walking through the roads and there's a person who was singing beside me, Kabhi Kabhi Mere Dil Mein Khayal Aata Hai, and that's the only Hindi line you could speak. Years before, when 20 years, 25 before, the non-resident Indian community, when I was in World Racism Conference in Durban, I remember an incident when Durban, there's a large Indian community who either speaks their mother tongue, either they speak the mother, in Latin America they either speak either Sindhi or the Latin American language there. Similarly in Durban conference was the South Africans, they either speak the South African or they speak their mother tongue. वो साड़ी पहनते हैं, बिंदी लगाते हैं, लेकिन हिंदुस्तान कभी आए नहीं हैं. So they still live the Indian culture and the soft powerness of Indians through the Indian food and the Indian culture which they inhabited. I wrote in my first book, Abhiti Jagbiti, there's a temple in Africa, there's a small temple where they took me and they said कि वहाँ पे एक शिव भगवान की मूर्ति है जो पुराने समय से चली आ रही है, वहाँ पे आप दर्शन कर लीजिए. And when I went there was a sculpture of a goddess जो एक्चुअल में काली माता की मूर्ति थी, लेकिन वो काली माता की जीवा बाहर रहती है, इसलिए उनको लगा है भगवान शिव की मूर्ति है, क्योंकि सालों से वहाँ से कोई हिंदुस्तानी नहीं है उस गाँव में. लेकिन कि 20-22 साल पुरानी बात है, अब तो दुनिया में सो मच टेक्नोलॉजी, एवरीथिंग इज सो विजिबल. Bollywood's our potent instrumental of soft power with an increasingly vocal and empowered diaspora. The importance of Indian mainstream cinema cannot be overstated. What one hopes to see in the years to come is India, in its many splendid cinematic glory, becoming a favored destination for a global film cruise and post-production operation. Already VFX studios in India, or run by Indian, are propelling the big Hollywood dream forward. One hopes to see Indian cinema and Indian cinematic expertise growing in strength and stature under the global spotlight. Whether it's Indian art, Indian culture, Indian yoga, Indian spiritualism, Indian music, Indian dance, Indian festivals, and Indian festivals in their folk forms have attracted people from all around the world for centuries. No one can deny the fact that Indian clothing are in fashion and Indian food are in fashion today. These and all are traveling faster and further. The International Yoga Day, for instance, is new embedded in the international calendar around the world. Traditional Indian medicine, Ayurveda, and the alternate form of treatments are also gaining around year on year. Ayush, Ayurveda, Yoga, Naturopathy, Unani, Siddha, Swarokpa, and Homeopathy centers overseas could well become center to all soft power strategy in the days ahead. Yoga Certifications Board for certifying Indian yogic practices and therapies under the Ayush and External Affairs Ministry can also be stepped in the right direction. As for tourism, few countries offer the kind of expenses India does when it comes to tourism, from Himalaya to the seas to one of the world's largest desert. to the lagoons and backwater of Kerala, to the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, India has more WHS than all but 5 countries in the world. To ancient civilization and pilgrimage sites, we have a luxury of tourist spots. Incredibly, India is now an international brand which can only grow bigger and better, especially with the kind of thrust on infrastructure development, roads to highways, to bridges to speed train, than the governments had embarked upon. And so many unique stories dot the Indian landscape. A small personal example of magical discovery of my other travels through our wonderland country in Bera, a little known leopard colony in the forests of Rajasthan, my native state, where leopards live harmoniously with humans, who despite their royal lineage and US education, Shatrunjay Pratap Singh, my friend, lives in Bera and devotes himself to preserving its ecosystem and photography in wildlife. I could discover the diverse ecosystem of Bera and was witness to the camaraderie that exists between the leopard and the local of the area. There's 99 leopards in that area and there's no human leopard conflicts in about 200 years histories of that place. The Rabri tribe, this I have tried to capture in the picture book, The Bera Bond. Hundreds of such magical discoveries due to India we still don't have compromised and celebrate. At personal level, as we everyone do to try to soft power India from our Prime Minister who can offer the Golgappas to the Japanese Prime Minister, that also starts from the soft power to what we offer to the others in the world. At the personal level, we are in a small foundation, Prabhakitan Foundation, and we often say, we showcase India to the world, we make all efforts to connect India to India, and we also try to bring the word to India. हम दुनिया को भारत के बारे में बताते हैं, हम पूरे भारत को असली भारत से जोड़ने की कोशिश करते हैं और हम पूरी दुनिया को भारत लाने के लिए भी प्रयत्नशील हैं. We carry out various cultural activities with the aim of preserving and promoting India's rich cultural heritage round the year with social and cultural activities in around 50 cities in India and so. In our humble way, we are part of the soft power chapter, so vital to India's growth story. I would like to end by touching upon the growing linkages between soft power and a creative economy. There are multiple definitions of creative economy, but for this forum, one was to stick to the UNESCO World Bank framework. Creative economy would encompass what? Audio, visual and interactive media, which comprise of film, TV, radio, streaming, podcast and video games. Literature and press, books, newspapers, magazines, libraries and book fairs. Performing art, drama, music, dance, festival, fest and fairs. Visual arts and crafts, fine arts, photographic arts. Intangible cultural heritage, festival like this, events, rituals, social practices, oral traditions, knowledge, skills and traditional crafts, culinary traditions and gastronomy, design and creative services, architecture, fashion design, graphic design, interiors, designs and advertisements. Heritage and tourism activities, historical places, archaeological sites, natural heritage and cultural landscape, museums and tourism activities. स्पष्ट है कि भारत के पास क्रिएटिव इकोनॉमी क्षेत्र में विस्तार की अपार संभावनाएं हैं, जिस पर ध्यान देने से ही वे भारत के सॉफ्ट पावर को और पोषित करेंगी, उसे और बढ़ावा देंगी. यहाँ उन्मेष में मौजूद आयोजक भी, सहयोगी भी और आप हम मौजूद इसमें हर कोई इसका हिस्सा है. इस सॉफ्ट पावर को इससे और अधिक शक्ति दी गई है. धन्यवाद. आभार.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to invite the session chair today, Shri H.S. Shiv Prakash ji, to further take the queries. Yes, to take the queries or yeah.
Okay. See, thanks for the lecture, Pankaj Mittal. We need to. It's not on? It's on, I think. To say we need to take benefits of the soft power, first we need to have power, right? If you look at the education system of India, it's collapsing day by day. None of the universities are in the top universities of the world. And only Indian Institute of Science somehow managed a slot in the 100 universities, top universities of the world. And our schools, our government schools and all are going down, like they are very poor, in very poor conditions. When we don't have power itself, what kind of soft power you are talking about?
Is it addressed to anybody in particular?
No, because she was talking about the soft power of education system. I'm more worried about the power itself. Like education system is collapsing for us. People are either going to the private colleges or going abroad. In that case, where is the soft power?
When we talk about soft power, Saumya or Shakti, both these are juxtaposed but they're very contradictory terms. और कभी कभी सौम्यता को कमज़ोरी भी माना जाता है. तो हम अपनी सौम्यता को अपनी कमज़ोरी कैसे ना समझें और किस तरह हम अपने को जो कहना है वो ऐसे वातावरण में भी सभी लोग यहाँ पे जो हैं लेखक हैं, बुद्धिजीवी हैं, अगर कहीं से उन पे कोई थोपा जाता है कि ये नहीं करना है या कुछ संकीर्णता आ जाती है सोच में, तो कैसे अपनी सौम्यता की शक्ति आप बरकरार रखेंगे. और दूसरा मेरा ये सवाल है कि जो हम सॉफ्ट पावर के भी बात कर रहे हैं, पिछले 20 साल से इंटरनेट से सब जगह सबको सब कुछ पता है. हमारी कल्चर के बारे में, हमारे क्विजीन के बारे में लोगों को इंटरेस्ट पैदा हो रहा है बिकॉज पीपल वांट वैरायटी. लेकिन इन सब चीज़ों से हम किस तरह से अपने आप को शक्तिशाली कर रहे हैं एक देश के लिए, एक नागरिक होने के नाते. और मेरा कहीं ये सवाल इससे भी जुड़ा है कि जो हमारी अभी हम NEP की आप बात कर रहे थे, जिस तरह की शिक्षा प्रणाली चल रही है, किसी ने ये कहा था कि इंडिया डज नॉट नीड एनिमीज, आवर एजुकेशन सिस्टम itself is going to make it sure that we don't have capable people who can think. तो इन सब चीज़ों में how do you harness this power?
No, this soft power that you are speaking of is not only in contrast with the hard power, but it is also in competition with that. And many a times this could be misleading, and I have known certain people who have done this. For example, even to this day in India, Ayurveda is not in the list of any of the health insurance companies, right? So if your health insurance is a business, but when you speak of the Ayurveda and alternate this, and you don't get money for it, how do you address this? Similarly, the certification, when it comes to, it's not necessary for people to come to India and study Ayurveda. And history of Ayurveda is written in Poland, I suppose. Yeah, Milenbeck. Yeah, and they are the people who will have to certify us. So again, your education, your medical field, and even added to that, there is this tantra. And there are so many people who are just misleading, saying that, oh, we will do this, we will do that, and you will know everything in the other country, you have so much of psychic power you get. And there are people, there are gurus. Do you think that the so-called godmen and gurus also are a part of this soft power?
So, हाँ, नहीं, एजुकेशन वाले क्वेश्चन का मैं आंसर देना चाहूँगी. See, I don't think our education system is collapsing. From this system only you are getting the CEOs of many global organizations. Through this system only you see that so many Indians are getting appointments in so many countries. So if the system was collapsing, nobody would be liking Indian education system. When you talk of rankings, somewhere I read the article, why are the rankings so white? So rankings, when you talk of international rankings, they are white. And when you talk of the parameters which decide the ranking, maybe many of them don't suit the Indian conditions. When we talk of, say, 50% of their marks are based on perception. So that perception, the academicians and the employers from whom they gather the perception ranking, maybe They don't know about the Indian system. When you talk of research, when you talk of citations, many times our papers are not published in the, say, Scopus Index journals. Many of our publications are in the regional languages which are not reflecting. So it is not only the rankings which will decide the quality of higher education. Rankings can have different parameters, and many of our universities are not even going for rankings, because ranking should be a byproduct. Ranking should not be the aim. And you must have seen that now many universities, they are going even to the extent of trying to fudge the data just to go into the ranking or getting the best NAC rating or even NIRF ranking. So that is not the ultimate game. Ultimate goal is to have a good education system which is preparing the students or the citizens of the country for a for something which can contribute in the development of the country. We cannot always be competing in terms of ranking, first ranking, second ranking, and then also again we should realize that India is not a rich country. India is a poor country. When you talk of rankings of, say, Harvard or Yale or Princeton or Oxford or Cambridge, see the amount of funding those universities get and the amount of funding our universities get. So how can, I mean, the entire education budget of India is given to one university, that is Harvard. So how can they compete? So we cannot compare apples with oranges. So ranking is not everything. But yes, our education system is good. It is progressing well, and it is giving very good manpower to rest of the world. Many countries are engaging Indian
If you are believing that our education system is excellent, then I don't have...
I'm not saying excellent. I'm saying it's not that bad as you think. It's not that bad. I mean, it's very easy to criticize, but Indian system is good.
See, earlier it was much better. That was much better in the earlier now.
It's,
हाँ नो जी पहले आप कहा था, मैं भी, मेरी आवाज़ भी बहुत सॉफ्ट है, कवि हूँ ना, कहते हैं ना कि खींचो ना कमानों को तलवार निकालो, जब तोप मुकाबिल हो तो अखबार निकालो. I think this is the idea behind soft power. I mean, there is a, let me just clarify at a more ontological basis that there is a confusion I can say here in the room. I guess this is not, soft power is not so narrowly defined, Let me just come back to my professor's class 30 years back. I think some of the things that we have done through our work, I think modified it, refined it, and broadened the idea of soft power. So it is not about, looking at industry, a particular, sector. This is not a sectoral analysis of education rising, education failing. Let me clarify this idea. What we are talking about today is the idea of soft power in a much broader sense, And this is where I began with. That India that is being reinvented, not through, sheer military or economic forces, but rather the soft forces. I think that should be clear to everyone. I mean, that's what we are debating about and discussing. So I would, leave aside the question, where we do good, where we have shortcomings, but at a broader idea of the education, certainly there is a revival in the West about, dealing with Indian idea of education. That is the soft power. This is how Professor Joseph Nye considered the idea of soft power. Yeah, it's not about, the Chinese education or the Korean education. I mean, like, this is here Indian techie. I mean, like, this whole idea of Indian techie, the software industry. In fact, the Tesla guy, he speaks about what is this basis of Indian education, the mathematics, This whole fascination, come to Bihar, there is a place called Tarangana, means from where you can see the stars. This is where go millennial back, recovering, reclaiming, and asserting our civilizational strength. That's the soft power. Coming back to Soumya Shanti ma'am, I guess the soft power speaks the language of this is where Joseph Nye said, and what he was trying to do in an academic and a scholarly sense, that let us not rely on the instrument of coercion. So when the Prime Minister spoke before the United Nations Assembly regarding Ukraine, and he very forcefully illuminated the world that this is not the era of war. I guess not, you can't settle, disputes through war. I think he was reasserting the idea of soft power in the sense of diplomacy. One is the missing link here, that Joseph Nye was looking at diplomacy, foreign policy, as an instrument of mitigating the war and conflict and setting up a peaceful world order. This is the idea of India, and where India can humanize, rehumanize the world. And the last, sir, Ayurveda and other stuff, I leave it to the question as a policy question. I worked there in the policy space with the governments around the world, and particularly India also. This is a policy issue, maybe, the corporate, the capitalism perhaps has a different way of, dealing with soft power. So what I'm trying to conclude here, three questions together. No, soft power is not about corporate world. This corporate world, if you come to Latin America, is a very ugly power, in a sense of soft power never refers to exploiting natural resources in an uglier way. I mean, this is not the soft power. Soft power is humanizing and harnessing human potential, and this is where I would conclude. We have realized through our works in the post-COVID world that if there is a country that can teach the world and can give a model in the post-anthropoic world that is going to come soon, because the planet is going away from our hand and we have to save the planet, here India can contribute in a much more meaningful and through his idea of soft power. This is the way India is becoming so relevant, come to any climate discussion in the world, not just tourism. I'm looking at the larger Durban conference in the climate change. If you come to any climate change, or, Amitabh Ghosh recently was talking about, what he calls petrofiction. I think days of petrofictions are over. The world is moving towards a new climate world. And this is where Amitabh Ghosh's new book talks about a world which speaks the language of soft power that we are dealing with. I stop here. Thank you. और बाकी सवाल, हाँ, इनका एक सवाल
आपने उसका उल्लेख किया था कि इलेक्शन का सॉफ्ट पावर यूज उसका थोड़ा विस्तार बताएं।
अब ये तो विस्तार में काम कर रहा हूँ, तो विस्तार ये है कि पिछले कई सालों से, लगभग ये 10 सालों के बाद, अंडर आर्टिकल 324 एक प्रोविज़न है जिसके अंदर कंडक्ट ऑफ इलेक्शंस, मैनेजमेंट एटसेट्रा होता है। हिंदी इंग्लिश मिला के बोलूँगा। So what we are looking at, and I have dealt with elections, my personal experience. I have worked in American election also. And, the American Constitution is designed in a way that all the 50 states have their own electoral machinery and processes. And it's a bitterly fought, And there are shortcomings, so many shortcomings. So what we are trying to do here with the Election Commission recently realized that you remember, I don't know how many of us are familiar that first election was done by a man called, and who was related to Shiva, I guess, Amartya Sen's family, Sukumar Sen, yeah. Sukumar Sen was, I guess, uncle connected to Amartya Sen's family. And 52 elections and the second elections, during that time when the elections were happening, it's considered in the literature and global experience miracle word I'm using. This is my soft power. So because Selig Harrisman wrote a very controversial, provocative book in the 60s called Dangerous Decades, and he predicted wrongly, absolutely wrongly, you can find the connection between Oppenheimer and Selig Harrisman, that India would collapse and disintegrate within 10 years. 2 elections flop. Miracle happened, continues, election continues. From here to Sikkim, Ladakh, everywhere, I've been all over and seen how elections, despite shortcomings, let me tell you, it's a miracle, but not a blissful miracle. So this could become a template in the sense of globe, and I inform you that a lot of countries are taking interest in learning from elections of India, because those who are coming from corporate sitting here and those who work in business school, when I go to an IIT, I speak about logistics last mile miracle, Logistics last mile miracle, except Bengal and few spots, please don't mind if you're Bengali, please. don't take it otherwise. But otherwise this couldn't become. एक बहुत सुंदर मॉडल है जिसको हम भेज सकते हैं सॉफ्ट पावर की, in terms of Joseph's idea. Thank you.
Any other question?
अच्छा हाँ, गुरु के बारे में like what? गुरु के बारे में my guru is here, Shiva, my friend and guru here. This is very significant, because the question, sir, you have raised is profoundly connected to the idea of soft power. But let me tell you, as I spoke about Ananda Kumaraswamy and how Ananda Kumaraswamy, the award in South Asian study, is considered so prestige. I'm not talking about what we call new gurus, and I have a very provocative term for that, so I would not use here. But let me tell you, in a Nietzschean sense, the continuation of West's fascination with Oriental gurus, continues, from Buddha to Rajneesh here, Madhya Pradesh, where he was born and associated with Madhya Pradesh, to all the gurus here. That's a very different story. And the West is actually charmed, certainly by some of our gurus, but not in the way that we look at our guru. I mean, like, they look at guru differently. I mean, like, this is where, despite the rise of neo-Hindu gurus, the fascination with Buddhism continues in the West, particularly in America. Come to Bodh Gaya and you will find how, in fact, I live in hills, so we have that, Baba near, Nainital, where all the big Hollywood stars come and take his Ashirwad. I guess in this sense, India is certainly a Vishwa Guru, not in the sense of these gurus, in the sense of, I tell you, I don't know Joseph Nye, in fact, considered the idea of transcendence. He didn't. And my colleague, panelist referred to Gita discussion in Oppenheimer film. I guess where, in the larger context of the transcending the planet, India is a remarkable experience. That's India, that India could do. Siva.
Thank you, fellow panelists. Strange are the ways of God, strange are the ways of Science Academy. In the last session, I said I came to play the role of Hanuman, but I was asked to play the role of Ram. I came to make a presentation, I had to chair it. This time, I came to be a spectator, and I was asked to play the role of Valmiki. I am very confused about this soft power business. So I asked Ashwini, and my learned friend gave me some idea of what it is. Knowingly or unknowingly, I've been dealing with soft power all my life. I've been teaching to whatever level, been writing poetry, and I've been exploring our spiritual traditions in many ways, apart from my creative writing. But sometimes, forgive me, it looks like a joke to me. There was one food caterer in Bangalore who advertised a new dish called beaten rice pizza served with red chili coconut sauce. And a lot of people rushed for it. It was nothing other than our neer dosa with red chili coconut chutney. I mean, what are we including in soft power? We are invoking the name of Buddha, Swami Vivekananda, Paramhansa Yogananda, and then samosas and Bollywood cinema. And I should also bring in some memories from my short spell as a cultural diplomat in Germany. I was posted by the then foreign minister to the position of director culture in the Indian embassy in Germany. So I loved it because it was a very easygoing job, but very unfortunate. But when I went there, it became very difficult because that was the year of Days of India in Germany. And I had a lot of hands-on experience on what is called the equivalent of this soft power exchange, cultural diplomacy. And then my ambassador, Suzy Vyas, who was a very enlightened ambassador, he asked me to prepare a detailed note about how to disseminate Indian culture during this event. I worked very hard and he praised it and he sent it to ICCR. Then without even looking at it, ICCR sent a whole list of programs, list of artists who have to be sent to Germany to represent Indian culture during this event. And these are the artists who had come there so many times earlier. And these are the artists who go there even after the end of Days of Germany. So, no thinking is going into cultural diplomacy, a soft power. I remember one event, this wax museum in London, they, got this wax images of Shah Rukh Khan, Aishwarya Rai, Amitabh Bachchan made it. They displayed in the embassy for a few days in the embassy auditorium. And a lot of young German girls would come and they would, prostrate before Shah Rukh Khan. Oh, Shah Rukh Khan, I love you, I want to marry you, and so on. On the one hand, this is Indian soft power. And there was Ayurveda. And as Professor Srinivasapati said, people don't need to come to India to learn Ayurveda. There are many brokers of Ayurveda in the West. Somebody in Frankfurt, he runs very expensive courses in Ayurveda without the help of the embassy or anything. And people who go there get served what is called Ayurvedic meal. I don't know whether Charaka or Sushruta ever talks about Ayurvedic meal. This is meal with half-baked dal and no chilies. So this Ayurvedic meal, and purely vegetarian. And yoga. What is not yoga? In San Francisco, there is something called the Spirit of the Church of the Holy Spirit, which is supposed to be a spiritual institution. And they have lots of alcohol there. People go and drink spirit and then sit there as long as they lie down there. That is the spirit, the Church of the Holy Spirit. So what happens when our great intangible heritage goes to the West? We should be very clear about it. Are we trying to market it? Can you market the Bhagavad Gita? Can you market the Vedanta? Can you market Buddhism? Can you market even Rabindranath Tagore? And the greatest transmitters of cultural heritage did not intend to do that. Who was the biggest cultural ambassador of India? Undoubtedly, Lord Buddha. Without shedding a drop of blood, without imposing anything by force, Buddhism, it won the hearts of 1/3 of the globe. And Tagore voluntarily decided to spread Indian wisdom. There is no country he didn't go to. And he went to Argentina, fell in love with that Ocampo woman, wrote wonderful poems for her. And he started speaking about Asian culture. He started speaking about world literature. So he wanted to unite the world through literature and culture. Ashwini said that soft power means the non-aggressive approach. If that is so, Bollywood cinema is not non-aggressive force. Bollywood cinema is no more art, it's industry. So industry is not always culture. And then I heard somebody saying, our Indian writers are getting Booker Prize. Who is getting it? Particularly English writers? Or somebody who writes in Hindi, whose book has been translated by a very influential translator. This again, danda. Award business has become danda. Tagore, when he got Nobel Prize, in those days there was no mobile or anything, internet. A postman came cycling and gave him that telegram. He said, at least I have now money to run my Shantiniketan. He was not going around the world to promote himself. So, first of all, if we think we can make soft power part of commodity economy, commodity future system, I think the approach is completely wrong. It's number one. And also the reductionist, sometimes our understanding of soft power is so reductionist, it's like only Ramayana and the Mahabharata and nothing else. And then it's everything. Samosa comes in, Shah Rukh Khan comes in, Katrina Kaif comes in. So this misalbaji consisting of Shah Rukh Khan, Amitabh Bachchan, Katrina Kaif. And all this is, I'm reminded of another incident. When I went to Colombia, there is a tea house right opposite Colombia. There was one Tamil friend of mine who was working there. He took me to this tea store, tea place, and there were 100 varieties of Indian tea, out of which there are 7. This, my friend was from Nilgiris, so 10 varieties of Nilgiri tea. And he was surprised, he had never heard of Nilgiri tea. When we asked for it, it's regular green tea. And I said, I am from Nilgiri, I have never seen this tea in Nilgiri. When I went to Berlin, I went to an Indian restaurant and I was looking at the menu. Something said, Madras chicken. I said, what is it? Bring it. It was regular tandoori chicken. I said, why are you misleading me? He said, it's not you, it's for others. Local people here. The way Indian cuisine is made available in the West is a great insult to Indian cuisine, and most of it is only Punjabi cuisine. I have nothing against Punjabi cuisine, it's very good, but the whole variety of Indian cuisine is never seen in the West, because I went to Sao Paulo in Brazil for the first Indian restaurant there, which was set up by a Bengali who was married to a local girl. And it was purely Punjabi cuisine. I asked him, why? You're a Bengali, you should try some Bengali dishes. He said, no sir, people don't accept it because we should give them what they want. So to give the West what they want, is that our idea of spreading our soft power? And yoga said, and somebody asked whether, I agree with Vasudendra, was a very eminent Kannada writer. He said that our education system is collapsing. Of course, it's an exaggeration, but what is worth saying is worth exaggerating, as D.H. Lawrence said. Because I worked in a public university for nearly 2 decades. Then I've also been working in private universities. I know what changes have taken place. In private universities now, there is no space for original thinking. They want only productivity. One CEO of the university I worked in, he was telling his colleagues, मुझे सिर्फ पैसों से मतलब है, जो भी करो, पैसा बढ़ाओ. So this commercialization of everything is going against the grain of what we call culture. I'm reminded of a book by Arthur Kiesler, who was once a communist and then he was disillusioned because of with communism. He wrote a book called The Yogi and the Commissar. So the military approach, the aggressive approach to get things done, he calls it, this is the model of the commissar, who wants to bring in order by forcing order on others through force. Where the yogi model is not that. The yogi orders his own self. Mahatma Gandhi once said, my mother never taught me any rights but only duties. So set your own house in order. So this is the yogi model. And there are different terms in different cultures for this. So Uday Soyinka, the great Nigerian writer, talks about two kinds of absolutist powers in the world. One is that of external conquest. It is absolutist. It wants to, possess everything through power, force. The other is the path of love, the path of music, the path of art. That also tries to overpower everything, but through love. These are two approaches. And the second I call soft power, the first I call hard power. Not going to nitty-gritty of this. And I don't see why we should invoke Western thinkers all the time. Our country has been producing greatest concepts in human history for 2000 years, and we have enough concepts to talk about ourselves. Let's not overly. This has become the bane of our Indian universities. For example, when I was this is where our soft power has completely gone to the seat. When I was in JNU, I was looking at many dissertations by our students, so MPhil and PhD students, and most of the bibliography contains only works by foreign authors or Indian foreign authors. I don't find any Indian writers quoted, Indian sources quoted. And even the research that's going on is like they want to tread the already trodden path. Somebody else already has done the research. And if you look at the soft power of India, there are so many unexplored areas, profoundly rich areas of culture. For example, one of my Dalit students from Chhattisgarh, he wanted to work on this Satnami Panth. Have you heard of the Satnami Panth? It's a very famous devotional Panth of North India. And it was pioneered by a Dalit guru called Guru Ghasidas. And they have a cultural expression called Panthi dance. This is the cultural expression, the way of communion. And nobody had worked on this. I asked him to work on it. He produced the synopsis, and he had no published books to quote on the subject. So he could quote only some tourism department books by Chhattisgarh government. And the then professor of and dean of the school said, "Where is your bibliography? You have not quoted any foreign writers." He came crying to me. I said, "Ask madam, which foreign writer has written about it?" So there has been no innovation. Now, earlier in the JNU and other universities, so-called left secular universities, it was imitative kind of scholarship. Now it's all commercial scholarship. So what will happen to the soft power of India? Of course, Professor Srinivas Murthy brought up the question of gurus. There are some Sadgurus, there is Jagat Gurus. Sometimes I wonder how many Jagats are there. There are so many Gurus. And how can there be only one Sadguru? Because even Guru Mahimna Stotram talks about Akhanda Mandalakaram Yaptam Minichacharam Yatparam Chintitam Miya Tasmai Shugar. He is all pervasive. How can one Guru be the only and true Sadguru? And the moment this guru calls yoga inner engineering, somebody calls inner something like inner digitalization. So you can't change the essence by changing the label. Label changing is good for sales, but not for the what is being disseminated. So we are in such crisis, and Madam said Sanskrit they are studying in Germany. They were studying in Germany. Of course, West produced very great Sanskrit scholars, and the greatest cultural ambassador in those days was Kalidasa's Vignan Shakuntala, its translation by William Jones. When Goethe laid his hands upon it, he was so thrilled. He wrote a whole poem on that, and that started sowed the seeds of Sanskrit studies in Europe. And but now, I was in Germany between 2012 and 14. Most of the Sanskrit departments were closing down because there are no takers, and government of India is not funding them, and German government cannot afford it. And one big library of Indian books, which was in the possession of Freiburg University, it was destroyed because they had no space to preserve it, and they got no help from government of India. So many so-called Oriental study centers are closing down all over Europe, and now the focus is on Indian studies. That scene is changing, but it's high time that we do something to promote our heritage with the same enthusiasm as Chinese are doing it through their Confucius institutes all over the world. So a lot more needs to be done, a lot more clarity is required, and we need to approach this subject critically without blindly celebrating it or being cynical about it. Thank you.
Thank you everyone, and I request the people sitting on the dais for a group photograph. Kindly stand up for a group photograph. अगला सत्र जो समापन सत्र है गौरांजनी सभागार में 6 बजे से आयोजित होगा. Thank you so much everyone for your time and remarkable presence.